Is the Niagara real estate market changing? The short answer is yes, it is. Hey guys, it's Patrick Burke here. It is Monday, March 7th. I'm in the office in the evening time. I just spent the day doing all kinds of stuff, but amongst that was I've been looking at the data on what's going on in the very near past, recent past, over the last week, the last month. And then I also looked at sort of trends going back over a decade. I've been talking to agents, listing agents, buyer agents at other brokerages just to see what's shaking out there. And the overall consensus, whether you look at what's going on right now, last week, or in 2012, is that yes, the market is changing, but there's a few things to talk about, a few things to understand to get a better handle on things. So I want to cover them today. So 3 things to cover. 1, the market always changes this time of year. This is March, right? We're coming into the heaviest time of year as far as the number of homes sold, the number of homes listed, the overall activity and volume happens. The biggest amount happens in the next 3 months. So yes, the market's changing. 2nd, we had such an intense run towards the end of last year, the last 3 or 4 or 5 months of 2021, and then into the beginning of this year. It was so lopsided, right? Such intense buyer demand. It just wouldn't stop, and every month it compounded, and the number of new listings month in and month out were sort of lackluster, okay, marginally above average, but it just was left in the dust by the demand. So that can only maintain itself for so long, so eventually it's going to change, and that's what we've seen start to happen. And thirdly, is the market's a bit segmented. Whereas towards the end of last year and beginning of this year, the cities were all largely behaving very similar to each other, whether it was the average sale price as a ratio to the asking price, how many houses were listed and sold, days in the market, all that sort of stuff. Whether you were looking at Thorold or St. Catharines or Fort Erie or wherever, it was all very similar. And now that's detached, where you see Niagara Falls is different than St. Catharines, is different than Welland, et cetera, et cetera. So first, the market always changes this time of year. If you look historically, going back 10, 12, 15, however many years you want to go back, March, April, and May are typically when the greatest number of homes are listed for sale. So that's for sale signs. You're driving home from work and you see one there's another one, there's another one. March, April, May is when that activity reaches its peak on a monthly basis. For the number of homes sold, that's April, May, and June, the 3 most active months of any given year, typically, aside from a few oddball years like 2020 when COVID arrived, but typically those are the most active months for the number of sales. So yes, of course, the market feels like it's changing because it's getting more active. There's more activity out there in general. There's more buzz, right? All right, I'm going to show you a few graphs. This first one shows you the number of new listings, and I know it's a big green mess, but it's going back 12 years, and it shows you year in and year out. You can see that peak. That peak of the green is the spring market every year. March, April, May, comes back down, March, April, May, every year, and you can see some years are more active than others. And yes, the 2020 market is a bit messed up because of COVID. It really sort of knocked the market out in general. But this shows you, again, new listings. So this one shows you sales. Same kind of thing. The biggest peaks are in that spring market. So March, April, May, June is when it comes up. So yes, is the market changing? It is, because it always does, regardless whether it's 2008 market or the 2020 COVID market, the really active 2017 market, whatever year you look at, that's just the norm. Okay, so if that green graph shows you what was normal and what is 2022 like compared to that normal, right? So this first image here, it shows you the number of new listings for January. So on the left, you see the average. So that 765 new listings for January, that's an average over the last 10, 12 years for what was normal, 765. January 2022, you can see, was 564 new listings. That's the worst January we've had in modern times, the lowest number of new listings as far as inventory goes. So then you move to February. The average for February going back 10, 12 years was sitting at 807 new listings. So 807 is what is normal. February 2022, you can see here, 939 new listings. So that was actually the best February, looking back 12 years, that was the best February for the number of new listings. Second highest was February 2017, and if you remember the 2017 market, it was a big one until the government changed things in April, but it started out extremely strong. So St. Catharines, number 1 city in Niagara as far as the number of homes sold every year, so we tend to keep an eye on St. Catharines. Where it goes, the market tends to follow to some extent. Number of new listings in January on average is 207. That's what we've seen over the last 10 or 12 years, 207. This year, January 2022, we had 129, the worst January on record. So then what happened in February? 218 is what is normal for the month of February. So usually we have about a 5% increase from January to February in the number of new listings. So January of this year, remember 129, we went from 129 to 258 in February. So 100% increase from January to February. So is the market changing? Rather than what is normal, a 5% increase from January to February, we had a 100% increase. Now that is because January was so terrible, but February was still strong, the second highest February on record for the number of new listings in St. Catharines. So very quickly on that percentage change thing, in Niagara, for the Niagara region, again, from January to February, historically, we see a 5, 6, 7% increase in new listings from January to February. This year, we had a 67% increase from January to February. Went from 564, the worst January ever, to 939, the best January ever. So is the market changing? I would suggest that as far as the number of new listings goes, January was terrible and February was excellent. March is going to be the telltale as far as what the market's going to do, what kind of setup we have coming in for spring. But in general, is the market changing? It absolutely is, because it was so dreadful in January. It's now waking up and it's running and it's catching its footing, so to speak. And it's doing what it should do this time of year, which is get moving, get active. So the second thing I was talking about earlier, markets change because of prolonged activity can only last for so long. Again, the number of sales were absolutely destroying the number of new listings month in and month out, was so significantly higher when you compare it to historic norms that it couldn't keep up. Well, we're now seeing that actually listings are proving to be as strong or stronger as far as historic comparisons against sales. So not a lot to get into there, but that's the big tell of what's going on in the market is month in and month out, sales just won. It was like leaving listings in the dust. Well, now listings are up and running, and now we've got ourselves a race. And in some cases, new listings are historically, as far as how they're trending, ahead of the number of sales, which is a huge change in the marketplace. And lastly, the third thing, segmented. So the market, rather than behaving like it's been over the last 6 months, which is very similar whether you looked at Fort Erie or Niagara Falls or St. Catharines or Lincoln, the overall metrics in the marketplace were very similar city to city. And what we've seen change now is, depending on where you look at, you see a completely different story. So remember I was saying about St. Catharines, how much stronger the listing inventory is, how much stronger the sales numbers are. When you go over to Niagara Falls, it's completely different. Niagara Falls had, including February, 8 consecutive months of terrible new listing inventory. So remember, St. Catharines and some of these markets had their best February ever. Niagara Falls still had a terrible February. Still trying to figure out what's going on over there. But so far here in 2022, there's only been 17 sales in Niagara Falls in the first week of March. To put that into context, last year there was 207 sales, so roughly 50 a week, and we're at 17 at the end of the first week here in March. So that's a significant difference. Last year in March there was 344 new listings, March 2021. Here this year there's 46 so far. So again, the trend, now again, the market's slowly starting, but unless the market really starts, moving its feet, the trend is that this March in Niagara Falls is going to be weak, just like the previous 8 months were. So the same thing goes when you look at Thorold. When you look anywhere, really, the markets are all behaving differently, and so we've got really volatile pricing, where like Niagara Falls was up 1 month $100,000 and down $50,000 the next. So you're going to see that consistency that happened in the Niagara market month in and month out is now sort of thrown out the window the last couple of months. And so I think it's going to be a bit of a wild ride, and it's going to really require insight and somebody who knows what they're talking about as far as making sense of the grand data, because if you look at just month over month stuff, forget it. It's almost pointless at this point because it is pretty complex as far as what's going on out there. All right, guys, I'm going to leave you with this. March 2022 and April 2022 will not stand a chance to the market data and the statistics of what happened in March and April of last year. Why? Because March 2021 was the biggest month of any month, not just March, of April, May, June, for the number of new listings in Niagara. 1,574 new listings in March 2021, the highest month of all time. And the same goes for sales. March of last year was the second highest number of sales in any given month. 1,149 sales happened in March of last year. That was second place. First place was April 2021. So absolutely huge volume in March and April of last year. So we can have a really strong March and April historically, but when you put it up against what happened last year, I can almost guarantee you it's going to be negative territory, possibly double-digit percentage negative territory compared to last year. What happens with pricing? In general, you're going to see volatile pricing. The smaller markets, especially like Lincoln and Grimsby and Fonthill and Thorold, you're going to see pricing that's going to be all over the place because there's going to be random outliers and then another one that pulls it down. It'll be all over the place. The larger markets, St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, if it gets its wheels turning, will start to regulate a little bit. But we've seen St. Catharines already settle down a little bit into that high sevens range. But St. Catharines can still be impacted by outliers. We talked about it before. There was one sale in St. Catharines in February that actually pushed the monthly average sale price up by $30,000. But in general, that's not going to happen again. I would be shocked because it was a complete one-off. But that being said, even the St. Catharines average sale price should start to settle down and even come back a little bit. That's what we're sort of seeing city to city. But I can tell you this is a time when you really have to get some insight into what's going on in the marketplace. If you just look at a simple graphic, it doesn't even tell you a third of the story. You really have to dig into it deeper because there's so much context and backstory with what's going on in general out there. So those are the three things. I really hope that you're okay out there and you're managing all right and this stuff makes sense and you're okay with life in general. It's a challenging time for sure, and I know real estate data isn't exactly on the top of the list of priorities, but that being said, I do want to keep you updated and keep doing what we're doing here. And if we can help, if you have friends or family that could use this kind of intel, by all means please forward this along. Otherwise, reach out anytime. I'd love to hear from you. And that's a wrap. Okay, thanks guys, take care out there. Bye.